Hi, here I am, Jay Smith, in another completely new city that I've not been in before. Well, not before with you all. I used to come to this city when I was a little boy. In fact, we would come through this city on the way back to India all the time. So I was last here about 4 years ago when I was just a teenager. You can all see by the buildings behind me, you probably all recognize what city I'm in. There's the EMP building, that's the Bank of China. In the background right up here is the Stock Exchange. This is the center of Hong Kong. This is the financial district of Hong Kong. And as you continue moving on around to the right, you will see these enormous buildings. This is a Hong Kong that I've not seen before. I'm surprised after 40 years coming here just to see how much it's changed. I remember coming across the Star Ferry and staying over at the YMCA on the other side, on Kowloon side. Now I'm back over here on the Hong Kong side in this great city. And this is the city that is you might say, the western part. Though it's part of China, it was always colonized by the British, so it was always a little bit separate. And even today, it still is seen as a separate entity. But I want to talk about China, which is off in that direction. China, most populated country in the world. And what's exciting to me is that China not only is got the most populated country, it's also got something that's happening here that's exciting. And that's the church in China. Church in China is growing exponentially, has been doing so for a number of years. Now, there are many different figures. Can't give you all the official figures. What we do know is that anywhere between 8,000 and 10,000 people a day are coming to Christ in China. That's amazing to me. That just boggles my mind. We're talking about unofficially upwards of over 70 million people now in the church in China. The fastest growing church anywhere in the world is right here in China, or I should say over there in China. Of that over 70 million, about 20 million of them belong to the official church, the recognized church. This is the church which the government does recognize. It tends to be nominal, but then there are some more freedoms they have, not only to have buildings and whatnot, but it's the unofficial church that I get excited about. This is the house church movement that's enormous and growing all over China. People meeting in houses, people meeting in secret, underneath the radar of the government. And it's that church that is growing exponentially. Enormous amount of growth. Not only is it growing as far as its numbers, it's also doing something that's pretty exciting, and that is it's taking the gospel to the rest of the world. And they have an entire movement of people who want especially to take the gospel to the Muslim world. Now, that's where I come in, and that's where I'm excited, because that's the part of the world that I want to take the gospel and have been taking the gospel to for the last 28 years. And there's a group of Chinese that are actually starting here in China, and they're going to walk right across all the way to Jerusalem, from here in China all the way to Jerusalem, to take the gospel to the Muslim world. Hundreds of thousands of them that want to do this. There is no other, I don't know of any other movement like that on earth. And that's why I'm excited. Because they're going to physically go, and many of them are never going to come back. They don't plan to come back. They plan to die in the process. That's how much they love the Lord Jesus Christ. That's how much they want to get the gospel out to the unreached world, to the Muslim world. Now, I'm excited to be a part of that. I'm excited to be here and to hear about it. I'm excited to realize that much of the missionary movement that in my parents' generation or my grandparents' generation used to come from the United States and Europe and Britain now has moved to the southern hemisphere, is now coming out of the southern hemisphere, and more importantly is now moving into China. And it is the Chinese who are going to be at the forefront of the missionary movement in the future. In fact, they're already beginning. The numbers are just enormous. And it's because of that I'm excited to be here in China. I'm excited to be here in Hong Kong to see a little bit about that even tonight. As I won't say exactly what I'm doing, but it's great to be here to not only share with some of the church leaders, but to see the vision they have. A vision my grandparents had, my parents had, a vision that I have, and a vision that is now coming out of this country. In the future, we're going to see an awful lot from this church. We're going to see an awful lot of impact for the rest of the world because of what's happening here in China. And we're going to see the gospel go to every corner of the earth. Not just because of the sheer numbers, but because the gospel that's coming from this country is a gospel that has been birthed in crisis, a gospel that's been birthed in persecution. God has used the persecuted church for the last 2,000 years. And if you look at the history of the church, you will see for the last 2,000 years that when there has been persecution, when there has been crisis, the church has grown the fastest, and China is exactly exemplary of that. That's why, in some ways, it stands to reason that it's going to be the Chinese church that's going to take this gospel. It's going to be the Chinese church that's going to not only communicate it to one of the most difficult parts of the world, the Muslim world, but it's going to be the Chinese church that's going to be the church of the future that all of us are going to be looking to, because that's a church that God is working mightily in. This is exciting to be here in Hong Kong. It's exciting to see China just over there. It's exciting to realize that my kids and my grandkids are going to be part of that movement. Lovely to be back in Hong Kong after 40 years. Lovely to talk to you about what's happening here. This is Jay then, here in Hong Kong. Over and out.